The stars disappeared first. Captain stood on the bridge of the S-Defender, watching with steady eyes as massive shapes blocked out the light of distant suns. The Empire had arrived at Earth, and they brought an armada that stretched across the entire solar system. Count asked quietly. "Over 3,000 capital ships, sir," his tactical officer reported, voice shaking. "Twice that many support vessels. Their smallest destroyer is bigger than our largest battleship." Nodded slowly. He had known this day would come. For 3 months humanity had watched the cut through the outer colonies like a knife through paper. 16 worlds had fallen silent. No survivors, no negotiations, just silence. "Send word to Admiral at Earth Command," said. "Tell her the Crimson Fleet has arrived." That was what everyone called them. The ships were deep red, the color of dried blood. They had earned that color over 300 years of conquest. 847 star systems had fallen to them. Not a single species had ever defeated them. Most didn't even try. Burst onto the bridge, still in his flight suit. The young scout pilot had been the first human to see the up close, 3 months ago at the colony of New Sol. He had barely escaped with his life. "Sir, they're broadcasting," said, breathing hard. "All frequencies, they want us to hear it." "Put it through," ordered. The changed. A commander appeared, tall and armored in black metal that seemed to absorb light. Its face was hidden behind a helmet, but its voice was clear and cold. "Humans of Earth," they said, "I am Fleet Commander of the Empire. You have 48 hours to surrender your world and all your colonies. Submit to our rule and your species will serve the Empire. Refuse and you will be eliminated. This is not a negotiation. This is certainty." The screen went dark. Silence filled the bridge. Could hear his crew breathing, could feel their fear like a living thing in the air. He understood it. They had never lost. Every species that refused them was gone, wiped from existence. No one even remembered their names anymore. "Sir," said quietly, "what do we do?" Turned to look at his young pilot. Was barely 23 years old. He should have been finishing university, not preparing to die in space. None of them should be here, but they were, and running was not an option. "We fight," said simply. 6 hours later, sat in the war room deep inside Earth Command. The room was crowded with military leaders, government officials, and scientists. Everyone looked exhausted. They had been preparing for this moment since the first colony fell, but preparation meant nothing against an enemy like the Admiral stood at the head of the table. She was 52 years old and had served in the military her entire adult life, had served under her for 10 years. He trusted her more than anyone else alive. "The numbers are simple," said, her voice cutting through the nervous chatter. "We have 400 combat ships. They have 6,000. Our weapons are effective to 5,000 kilometers. Theirs reach 50,000. In a direct fight, we lose in 17 minutes. Our computers have run the simulation 800 times. We never win." "Then we surrender," someone said. A government official, someone who had never been in battle. "We have no choice." "There is always a choice," said coldly, "and humanity chooses to fight." "That's suicide," the official shouted. "We'll all die." "Perhaps," agreed, "but we'll die free, and we'll make them pay for every meter of space, every moon, every single human life. They think we're weak because our technology is inferior. They're about to learn that technology isn't everything." Spoke up, "Admiral, what's the plan?" Smiled, and it was a dangerous smile. "We don't have their weapons or their shields, but we have something they don't. We have 3,000 years of warfare in our history. Humans have been fighting and killing each other since we learned to pick up rocks. We know war in ways they never will." She activated a hologram showing Earth's orbital defenses. "They expect us to defend, to form a battle line and try to stop them. We won't do that. Instead, we're going to hit them where they don't expect it. Your report said their ships have a weakness." Stood nervous but steady. "Yes, Admiral. Their shields are powerful, but they have to lower them to fire their weapons. For 0.3 seconds, they're vulnerable. It's not much time, but it's something. It's enough, said. We're going to use kamikaze drones, unmanned ships packed with nuclear weapons. They'll wait until the ships fire, then strike in that window. We'll lose the drones, but we'll take ships with them. They'll adjust their tactics after the first wave, another officer said. Absolutely, agreed. And we'll adjust ours. That's the point. We keep changing, keep adapting, make them react to us instead of the other way around. Every species they've fought either gave up immediately or fought the same way from start to finish. We're going to show them what happens when they face an enemy that learns. Felt something stir in his chest. Not hope exactly. The odds were still impossible, but purpose. A reason to fight beyond simple survival. The meeting continued for 3 more hours. Plans were made, forces positioned, civilians evacuated from the most vulnerable areas. When it ended, found himself standing on an observation deck, looking at Earth below. The blue and green world that had given birth to humanity. It was so beautiful it hurt to look at. Joined him, silent for a moment. Do you think we can win, sir? The young pilot asked. No, said honestly. But winning isn't the point anymore. Making them remember us is. 12 hours before the deadline, the commander broadcast again. This time, the message was directed specifically at Earth Command. I am curious, said, his voice almost thoughtful. Every species we encounter does one of 2 things. They surrender immediately or they flee to find a new world. You humans are doing neither. Why? Why don't you run? Why stay to defend a single planet when the galaxy is vast? Why choose certain death over survival? Admiral appeared on screen, broadcasting her response across all human channels so everyone could hear. Because this is our home, she said simply. Earth is where humanity was born. Our ancestors are buried here. Our history is written in this soil. You ask why we don't run. Because humans don't abandon home. We don't surrender what we love, and we will never ever bow to you. She paused, then added, You've conquered 800 worlds because everyone was smart enough to fear you. Congratulations, Commander. You're about to learn what happens when you meet someone too stupid to run. The screen went dark. Laughed, a sharp sound of desperate pride. Too stupid to run, I like that. Smiled grimly, so do I. The 48 hours ended. The fleet moved forward, expecting quick victory. Took his position on the Defender's bridge, watching the crimson ships advance like a tide of blood across space. All ships, he commanded, prepare for combat, show them what humanity is made of. The first battle for Earth began, and the galaxy would never be the same. The first wave of ships came in perfect formation, their weapons charging with light that looked like falling stars. Captain watched them approach on the Defenders, counting down in his head, 3,000 meters, 2,000, 1,000. Now, he shouted. 300 unmanned drones that had been hiding behind Earth's moon suddenly activated. They were small, cheap, and filled with enough nuclear material to crack a mountain. Had programmed them himself, using the timing he had observed during his escape from New Sol. The ships fired their massive cannons. For exactly 0.3 seconds, their shields dropped. The drone struck. 17 ships exploded in brilliant flashes of light. For the first time in 80 years, the Crimson Fleet took casualties in battle. Then they adjusted. Their remaining ships spread out, breaking formation. They stopped firing in synchronized volleys. The second wave of drones found no openings and were destroyed before reaching their targets. 17 ships, said quietly, out of 3,000, but it's a start. The battle became chaos. Human ships darted in and out, firing missiles and rail guns that barely scratched armor. But every few minutes, a human ship would do something unexpected, ramming attacks. Self-destructs timed perfectly. Weapons fired from impossible angles. They kept winning, but they were bleeding. After 6 hours of fighting, the human fleet retreated. They had lost 93 ships. They had lost 12. In any normal war, that would be called a catastrophic defeat. Admiral called it a victory. 12 ships, she said at the emergency command meeting. They've been conquering for 300 years, and we just taught them they can bleed. That changes everything. Doctor stood up. She was a who had been studying the wreckage of technology. Her clothes were stained with oil, and she hadn't slept in 2 days. I've analyzed their weapons systems, said, displaying data on the holographic screen. Their technology is incredibly advanced, but it's also standardized. Every ship uses the same shield frequency, the same weapon calibration, the same tactical protocols. Do you know what that means? They haven't needed to adapt, realized. Every enemy they fought was beaten so quickly that there was no reason to change anything. Exactly, said. Their military doctrine is 300 years old because it's always worked. But now they're fighting us and we're changing tactics every engagement. They don't know how to handle it. Was also at the meeting, promoted to squadron leader after his drones had proved successful. What's our next move? He asked. Brought up an image of Mars. The red planet was humanity's largest colony, home to 3 million people. They are moving to siege Mars. They're surrounding it with a blockade fleet. They plan to starve the colony into submission. We need to evacuate, someone said. We will, agreed. Civilians only, but our military forces are staying. Sergeant is already on the ground preparing defenses. Had been born on Mars. He was 35 years old, a veteran of the border conflicts with the outer colonies. He knew the red planet better than anyone alive, and he was about to turn it into the Empire's worst nightmare. The siege of Mars began 3 days later. They surrounded the planet with 200 ships, cutting off all supply lines. They sent a message to the colony: surrender in 72 hours or be destroyed. Stood in the underground command center looking at his forces. He had 12,000 soldiers. Most were volunteers who refused to evacuate. They knew what was coming. Listen up, said to his officers. The fight from orbit and from the air. They have mechs and drones and weapons we can't match, but they've never fought on Mars before. We have. This is our home, and we're going to make them regret ever landing here. A civilian engineer named approached him. She was small, barely over 5 feet tall, but she had an intensity that made people listen. Sergeant, I have an idea, said. The mining equipment, the industrial drills and excavators, we can weaponize them. How? Asked. Grinned. The armor is strong against energy weapons and explosives, but these drills can cut through solid rock, and their mechs have to walk on the ground just like anything else. We dig traps. We use the planet itself as a weapon. Liked her immediately. Do it, take whoever you need. When they finally landed their ground forces, they expected quick victory. They had never lost a ground battle. Their mechs were 12 feet tall, armed with plasma cannons and shielded against conventional weapons. They marched toward the colony's main dome in perfect formation. They didn't see the traps until it was too late. The ground collapsed beneath them, dropping 3 mechs into mining shafts that went down for miles. Others triggered improvised explosives made from mining charges. Human soldiers popped up from hidden bunkers, firing rocket launchers at close range before disappearing into tunnels they couldn't fit through. They're using guerrilla tactics, the ground commander reported, confused. They won't stand and fight, they hit and run. They use the terrain against us. This is irregular. Adapt, fleet commander ordered from orbit. Destroy the tunnels, level the terrain. But every time they destroyed a tunnel, the humans opened 3 more. Every time they leveled an area, the humans retreated to another sector. Weaponized mining equipment became legends among the troops. A drill that could punch through armor. An excavator modified to launch rocks at hypersonic speeds. Construction vehicles turned into mobile fortresses. The battle for Mars lasted for 17 days. The humans were losing, slowly but surely. They had infinite reinforcements. The defenders of Mars did not. On day 18, received the evacuation order from Admiral. Get your people out, you've done enough. Gathered his forces in the underground tunnels. Of the 12,000 soldiers who had stayed to fight, only 8,000 remained. They were exhausted, wounded, and out of ammunition, but they were still standing. Civilian ships are landing at the North Pole, announced. We're evacuating, but we're going to give the something to remember us by. Had saved the best for last. The entire mining network beneath the colony was rigged with explosives. Kilometers of tunnels, all connected, all ready to blow. The human forces evacuated in small groups, fighting a running retreat that kept the focus on them instead of the fleeing civilians. When the last transport lifted off, triggered the charges. The entire northern hemisphere of Mars shook. The colony base, along with 4,000 of their troops and 17 mechs, collapsed into a massive crater that could be seen from space. Aboard the Defender, Captain watched the explosion and allowed himself a small smile. Mars has fallen, he said, but 90% of our people got out, and they just learned that taking our worlds is going to cost them. Doctor was already analyzing the combat data from the Mars campaign. She had been collecting information from every engagement, every battle, every skirmish. Her conclusion was stunning. They are tactically rigid, she explained to Admiral. They follow a set doctrine because it's always worked, but we're forcing them to adapt and they're not good at it. Every battle, we learn more about them. Every battle, we try something new. We're evolution in real time and they don't know how to counter it. Looked at the reports. Humanity had lost Mars and 6 other colonies. Billions of people were dead or displaced. They were still winning by every metric that mattered. But something had changed. How long did it take them to conquer the species? Asked. 16 days, answered. Complete subjugation. And how long have we been fighting? 73 days. Nodded slowly. We're the longest resistance in history. Every day we survive is a day we learn, a day we adapt, a day we prove that humanity doesn't quit. She opened a broadcast to all human colonies, to every ship, to every soldier and civilian who could hear her voice. This is Admiral, she said. Mars has fallen, but Mars fought. We've lost billions, but we're still standing. They think we should be extinct by now. They ask why we don't run, why we don't surrender. Here's your answer: we're not running, we're not quitting, we're just getting started. Across human space, exhausted soldiers straightened their backs. Frightened civilians found courage. The message spread. Humanity was still in the fight. Commander received reports of the Mars evacuation with something close to confusion. They should have broken by now, he said to his officers. Every projection said they would surrender after losing their first major colony. Why are they still fighting? No one had an answer. For the first time in 300 years, the Empire didn't understand their enemy, and that scared them more than they wanted to admit. 6 months had passed since the first ship appeared in Earth's sky. 6 months of blood, fire, and losses that made Admiral wake up screaming in the few hours she allowed herself to sleep. Humanity had lost 16 colonies out of 34. Earth itself was still standing, but barely. The outer defensive rings were gone. The moon bases were rubble. Half of humanity's population was dead or displaced. Refugee ships crowded every remaining station and colony, millions of people with nowhere to go. But humanity was still fighting. Was 16 years old when the war started. Now, at 17, he commanded a resistance cell of 40 fighters on Europa Station, one of Jupiter's moons that had become a massive refugee camp. His parents had died when the bombed New Sol. His sister had been on a colony ship that never arrived at its destination. He had nothing left except anger and the rifle in his hands. Patrol in Section 7, someone whispered. Second in command was a girl named. She was 15, orphaned like most of them. "How many?" asked. "4 soldiers, standard sweep." Smiled coldly. "Let's teach them why they shouldn't walk alone in our territory." The soldiers never saw them coming. Cell used weapons made from spare parts and stolen equipment. They struck from ventilation shafts, from darkened corridors, from places the advanced sensors couldn't detect because they were too primitive. 4 soldiers went down in under a minute. "Take their weapons," ordered, "and move. Their backup will be here in 5 minutes." This was life now. Hit and run. Survive another day. Make the enemy pay for every meter of space they took. Commander Sara stood on the bridge of the Indomitable, humanity's last carrier group. She was 41 years old and had lost 3 ships under her command. Each loss felt like losing a piece of her soul. "Status report," she said quietly. "Fleet is moving toward the Saturn colonies," her tactical officer reported. 200 ships. They're going to hit Titan next." Sara looked at the tactical display. Titan had 10 million refugees. There was no way to evacuate them all in time, and she had only 35 ships left in her group. "We can't win this fight," her executive officer said quietly. "We never could," Sara agreed. "But we can slow them down. Every hour we buy is another hour for civilians to evacuate, prepare for combat, and someone get me Commander." Was humanity's best intelligence officer. He was 29 years old and had spent the last 6 months hacking communications, learning their language, understanding their tactics. He was also the one who discovered something that changed everything. "Admiral needs to hear this," said when he appeared on the comm screen. His eyes were red from exhaustion but bright with excitement. "I've been analyzing military history, 300 years of conquest, 847 systems, and I found a pattern." "What pattern?" asked. She was in Earth Command, looking older than she had 6 months ago. The war was aging them all. "They have never needed to learn how to fight a real war," explained. "Every species they encountered either surrendered immediately or was destroyed so quickly that they never had to adapt. Their entire military doctrine is based on overwhelming force and intimidation." "We know this already," said frustrated. "But here's what we didn't know," continued. "They're not warriors, they're conquerors. There's a difference. Warriors know how to fight when things go wrong. Conquerors only know how to win easy victories. Their battle tactics haven't changed in 300 years because they've never needed to change." Doctor joined the conversation from her lab. "He's right. I've been studying the defector we captured last month. He told me something interesting. The Empire has internal divisions. Not all of them support the endless conquests, but the military caste controls the government and they can't admit weakness." "What does this mean for us?" asked. "It means they're afraid," said. "Not of losing to us militarily. They're still winning. But they're afraid of what it means that we're still fighting. Every day we survive makes them look weak, and weakness is death in their culture." Leaned back in her chair, thinking. "So we make them more afraid. We show them that defeating humanity will cost more than any victory is worth." Commander Sara implemented this strategy at Titan. Her 35 ships couldn't defeat 200 vessels, but they could make the pay. She launched Operation Ghost Fleet, an idea that came from Doctor's research. They took old freighters and civilian ships, packed them with explosives and basic AI, then programmed them with combat patterns learned from human commanders. The Ghost Fleet looked like real ships on sensors. They moved like ships with human crews. They died like heroes. They fell for it. They wasted ammunition and time destroying what they thought were major targets. While they were distracted, Sara's real ships hit them from unexpected angles, and the civilians of Titan boarded evacuation ships. By the time they realized the deception, Sara had saved 7 million people. She lost 22 of her 35 ships doing it. "Was it worth it?" her executive officer asked as they retreated. Sora looked at the evacuation ships jumping to safety. 7 million lives. Yes, it was worth it. On Europa Station, Resistance Cell was getting bolder. They had 60 fighters now, mostly teenagers and young adults who had lost everything. The engineer from Mars had sent them designs for improvised weapons before she evacuated. People built them in secret workshops, turning the refugee camp into a fortress. "They are demanding we turn over all resistance fighters," reported. "They're threatening to destroy the station if we don't comply." "Let them try," said grimly. "This station has 2 million refugees. If they want to kill 2 million people to get 60 of us, they're welcome to try. The galaxy will see what kind of empire they really are." They backed down, not because they cared about civilian deaths, but because made sure their threats were broadcast across all channels. Other conquered species saw it, questioned it, wondered if they were as invincible as they claimed. The defector officer, a soldier named, met with Admiral in secret. He was older than most soldiers, his armor from 100 battles. "Why did you defect?" asked. "Because I finally understood what my empire has become," said quietly. "We don't conquer to bring order. We conquer because we can't stop. It's all we know. And you humans are showing the galaxy that we can be resisted." "We're losing," said bluntly. "Half our worlds are gone, billions dead." "But you're still fighting," said. "Do you know how rare that is? Every other species broke after losing one major colony. You've lost 16 and you're still standing. The command is terrified of what that means." "Why are they scared of us? They're winning." "Because you should run," said intensely. "Every species with sense flees when faced with extinction. They find new worlds, new systems, somewhere safe. But you humans stay. You fight for every meter of ground, and the Empire doesn't understand it. They call you insane, suicidal, too stupid to know when you're beaten. But I see something else. I see a species that values something more than survival." "What's that?" asked. "Home," said simply. "You fight for home, for the dirt your ancestors are buried in, for the memory of what you were and what you might be again. They don't understand that. We abandoned our 800 years ago. We've been nomads ever since, taking what we want and moving on. We have no home, and we can't comprehend why you die for yours." Was quiet for a long moment, then she smiled. "You just gave me an idea." 3 weeks later, launched the most ambitious intelligence operation of the war. He hacked into the military network and began broadcasting footage. Not propaganda, just truth. He showed them recordings of human history, the world wars, the rebellions, the revolutions, humans fighting humans with a savagery that made the military caste uncomfortable, battles where humans refused to surrender even when surrounded, soldiers who fought to the last bullet, the last breath, the last heartbeat. "This is what you're fighting," his broadcast said in the language. "These creatures don't fight to win. They fight because surrender is incomprehensible to them. They've been killing each other for thousands of years, perfecting the art of war while you were conquering species who couldn't fight back. And now you face them. How long until they make you bleed dry?" The broadcast spread through the fleet like a virus. Soldiers watched them in secret, shared them, questioned them. "Is this true?" a young soldier asked his commander. "Have they really been fighting for their entire existence?" "It doesn't matter," the commander said, but his voice was uncertain. It mattered very much. Captain received new orders from Admiral. "We're going on the offensive," she said. "With what?" asked. "We've lost 2/3 of our fleet." "With what we have left," said firmly. "Found the location of we're going to strike it." Stared at her. "That's insane. We can't possibly win that fight." "We don't need to win," said. "We just need to show them that even when losing, humanity will take the fight to their front door. We need to make them afraid. Afraid that we'll never stop. Afraid that defeating us might cost more than their empire can afford." Thought about everything they had lost, everyone who had died, the children like who had grown up too fast, the soldiers like Sara who kept fighting even when hope was gone. "When do we leave?" he asked. 2 weeks, said. "Prepare for the longest shot humanity has ever taken." Heard about the offensive from the refugee network. He stood in the cramped quarters of Europa Station, surrounded by other young fighters who had lost everything. "They're going to attack he said quietly. "They're taking the fight to the enemy." "We should be there," said. "We can't," said. "We're needed here, but we can do our part. We keep fighting. We keep surviving. We show them that humanity doesn't quit no matter what." The young fighters raised their improvised weapons. On Earth, on the colonies, on every refugee station and hidden base, humans prepared for the final gambit. The war was far from over, but humanity was done playing defense. The plan was insane. Everyone in Earth Command knew it. Admiral knew it best of all. But desperation made people creative, and humanity had nothing left to lose. "We're going to split our forces," explained to the assembled commanders. The holographic display showed 2 battle groups. "Admiral will defend Earth with everything we can spare. Captain will take our remaining strike force directly to the—" "That's suicide," someone said. "Of course it is," agreed calmly. "But suicide with a purpose. They think they understand us now. They think we're desperate, cornered animals. They expect us to defend our last positions and die with honor. They don't expect us to attack." Captain studied the star charts. The Called was deep in enemy territory. To reach it, his fleet would have to pass through 12 occupied systems. Every single one would be trying to kill them. "How many ships do I get?" asked. 200, said. "Everything we can spare that's still combat capable. It's not enough to win a battle against their home fleet, but it's enough to make a statement." "What statement?" asked. Smile was cold and fierce. "That even when we're losing, we can reach out and touch you. That nowhere is safe. That humanity will never, ever stop coming for you." Admiral was 63 years old. He had been ready to retire before the war started. Now he commanded Earth's last defense force, knowing he would never live to see peace. "How long do we need to hold?" he asked privately. 30 days minimum, said. "That's how long it will take to reach and do what needs to be done. They will throw everything at us once they realize we've divided our forces." "I know," said quietly. "That's why you're staying. You're the best defensive commander humanity has. If anyone can hold Earth for 30 days against impossible odds, it's you." Nodded slowly. "It's been an honor, Admiral." "The honor is mine," said and saluted him. They both knew it was goodbye. While the fleets prepared, Doctor worked around the clock on a special project. She had been studying biology and technology for months, looking for any weakness. She found one. "They use neural interfaces for everything," explained Tu, and "their ships, their weapons, their armor. It's all connected to their nervous systems. Makes them incredibly efficient soldiers, but it also makes them vulnerable." "Vulnerable how?" asked. Showed them a vial of what looked like clear liquid. "This is a virus, not a biological one, digital. It attacks the neural interface protocols. It won't kill them, but it will disable their connection to their equipment. A soldier without their interface is just a soldier, no better than us." "How do we deploy it?" asked. "That's the tricky part," admitted. "It has to be introduced into their network directly. Someone has to get close enough to one of their major command nodes to upload it." "That has command nodes," said. "Exactly," said. "If you can get this virus into their network it will spread through their entire fleet within hours. It won't win the war for us, but it will level the playing field." While preparations continued, Commander was waging his own war. He had spent months infiltrating communications. Now he used that access to spread misinformation and fear. He sent fake reports of human fleets appearing in random systems, made commanders doubt their intelligence, created ghost signals that made the enemy see threats that didn't exist, and most importantly, he found something that changed everything. Admiral said, appearing on screen with barely controlled excitement. I found them, the conquered species, the ones the defeated and enslaved over the centuries. They're still alive. What? Leaned forward. The don't exterminate species, explained. They enslave them, use them for labor, for resources. I've found evidence of at least 40 species still under control, and they hate their masters. They're just waiting for a sign that they can be beaten. How does this help us? I can contact them, said. Show them that we're still fighting. Tell them that if they rise up when we attack, the Empire will have rebellions on dozens of worlds. They won't be able to focus their forces. Saw it immediately. Divide their attention, make them fight on multiple fronts. They've never had to do that before. Exactly, said. The conquered through overwhelming force focused on one target at a time. If we make them spread out, defend multiple systems simultaneously, their advantage disappears. Do it, ordered. Contact every enslaved species you can find. Tell them humanity is coming. Tell them to rise up and take back their freedom. 2 weeks later, Captain stood on the bridge of the Defender, looking at his fleet. 200 ships, against the largest military empire in the galaxy. The odds were so bad they were almost funny. Beside him stood, now a full commander. The young pilot who had survived New Sol had become one of humanity's best tactical minds. He would be flying one of the bombers carrying Dr. Virus. Are you scared? Asked him. Terrified, admitted, but also excited. We're about to do something no one has ever done. We're going to attack thee on their own home ground. We're probably going to die doing it. Probably, agreed, but at least we'll die making them afraid. The fleet jumped to hyperspace, beginning the long journey too. Behind them, Earth prepared for siege. They noticed the human fleet's departure immediately. Fleet commander couldn't believe the reports at first. They're going where? He demanded. Toward commander, his intelligence officer reported. 200 ships. They bypassed our forward positions and are heading directly for the... That's impossible. They must be fleeing, looking for refuge somewhere. No, sir, their course is direct. They're coming for us. Was silent for a long moment. Then he began to laugh. It was not a pleasant sound. They're insane, he said. Utterly insane. They can't possibly win this battle. We have 3,000 ships defending. They have 200. They'll be destroyed. Should we pursue them, sir? No, said, thinking quickly. Let them come. We'll crush them at and end this war. But send word to all fleets. We're launching a final assault on Earth. If the humans want to throw away their strike force on a suicide mission, we'll take advantage of their stupidity and finish there while they're gone. Admiral received the warning from his scouts. They were coming, not with hundreds of ships, with thousands. How long do we have? He asked. 6 days, sir. Nodded calmly. Then we have 6 days to prepare. Get me Sergeant Commander Sora and that young resistance leader on Europa. What's his name? Sir. Yes, get me everyone who knows how to fight dirty. Because we're about to defend Earth the way only humans can. Received the call with something close to joy. Finally, a real battle. Not hit-and-run raids, but a chance to stand and fight. Gather everyone, he told. Every fighter, every weapon, every improvised explosive taught us to make. We're going to Earth. They will outnumber us 1,000 to 1, said. Good, said fiercely. Then we'll kill 1,000 before we die. Came out of retirement on Titan. Brought her engineering crews and their weaponized mining equipment. Saw what remained of her carrier group. Across human space, every able-bodied fighter who could reach Earth began traveling there. This is it, told his assembled forces. Our last stand. They think they'll overwhelm us with numbers. They think we'll break and run. They're wrong. We're going to show them why Earth has survived every disaster, every war, every catastrophe for thousands of years. Because humans don't quit. Humans don't surrender. and humans defend their home to the last breath. Meanwhile, fleet was halfway too. They had fought through 4 garrison fleets, losing ships with every engagement. Now had 137 ships left. "Status on the virus carrier?" asked. "Commander reports ready," his tactical officer said. "Doctor's virus is loaded and waiting for deployment." "Ants rebellions?" "Starting to report in, sir. 3 enslaved species have begun uprisings. They are having to divert ships to suppress them." Felt something he hadn't felt in months. Not hope exactly, but possibility. "All ships," he broadcast. "We're 5 days from showing the galaxy's deadliest empire what happens when they pick a fight with humanity. Prepare for battle. And remember, we're not trying to win. We're trying to send a message." In the last transmission before entering space, sent a message to itself. He made sure every citizen could hear it. "People of," said calmly, "this is Captain of the Earth Defense Forces. Your empire has demanded our surrender, has demanded we bow to your rule. We refused. So now we're coming to your home, not to conquer, not to enslave, but to show you that no one is beyond our reach. Your leaders started this war. They killed billions of humans. Now we're going to show them the price of attacking someone who will never, ever stop fighting back." The message ended. The fleet dropped out of hyperspace. Its defensive fleet was waiting. 3,000 Crimson ships against 137 human vessels. "All ships," commanded. "Attack formation. Let's show them what humanity looks like when cornered." The battle began, and across the galaxy, enslaved species watched with hope for the first time in centuries. The space around turned into hell. Captain's fleet of 137 ships faced 3,000 defenders, and the battle was exactly as one-sided as the numbers suggested. Human ships died by the dozen, their hulls torn apart by crimson fire. But they kept coming. "Status," called out as another explosion rocked the defender. "Almost there, sir." His voice came through, tight with concentration. His small bomber craft weaved through the chaos, dodging fire. His mission was simple but nearly impossible. Get close enough to one of his orbital command stations to upload Doctor's virus. "All ships covers approach," ordered. What remained of the human fleet turned as one, throwing themselves at the forces between and his target. Ships rammed cruisers. Fighters flew suicide runs to clear paths. 50 human ships died in 3 minutes. But they bought the time he needed. "I'm in range," shouted, "uploading now." His bomber latched onto the command station's hull. For 10 seconds that felt like hours, the virus transferred, then detached and burned his engines hard, trying to escape. He almost made it. A destroyer caught him with a plasma burst. Ship exploded in a brief flash of light. "Virus is uploaded," said quietly, watching his friend die. "Now we wait and see if it works." On the planet below, chaos erupted. The virus spread through the neural network like wildfire. Suddenly, soldiers found their armor unresponsive. Pilots lost control of their ships. Defense systems went dark. The Empire, which had relied on technology for 300 years, discovered what it meant to fight without it. "What's happening?" Fleet Commander demanded as his own ship systems flickered. "Unknown viral attack, sir. It's affecting all neural interfaces. We're losing connection to our equipment." "Switch to manual controls." "Sir, we don't have manual controls. Everything is interface dependent." For the first time in his long military career, felt fear. Meanwhile, at Earth, the final battle was beginning. Admiral watched thousands of ships approach. His defense force numbered barely 300 vessels, cobbled together from everything humanity had left. "They're demanding our surrender," his communications officer reported. "Tell them," said calmly, "that Earth doesn't surrender, not today, not ever." The fleet opened fire. Earth's orbital defenses lit up like stars. But this time, the defenders of Earth had tricks they hadn't seen before. Sergeant had spent days preparing the planet's surface. Every major city had been evacuated. What remained were traps, thousands of them. When ground forces landed, expecting to find terrified civilians, they found weapons instead. Mining equipment that had been turned into instruments of war, buildings rigged to collapse, streets that became killing zones, and resistance fighters who had learned to fight dirty. Their landing in Section 7, reported from his position. At 18 years old, he commanded 300 fighters, springing Trap Delta. The soldiers walked into what looked like an abandoned city block. The ground erupted beneath them, modified mining charges creating a crater 3 blocks wide. Humans, a commander snarled. They don't fight fair. Fair, muttered two who fought beside him. They want to exterminate us and they're complaining about fair. In space, Commander Sara led what remained of her carrier group in a desperate dance. She couldn't win the space battle, but she could delay it, buying time for the ground forces. All fighters pattern Alpha, she commanded. Her pilots flew between ships, forcing them to be careful with their fire or risk hitting their own vessels. It was dangerous, nearly suicidal, but it worked. Every minute Earth survived was a victory. Back at the virus was doing its work, watched in amazement as ships began losing coordination. Some stopped firing, others drifted aimlessly. The perfect military machine that had conquered 800 worlds was breaking down. They're sending backup, his tactical officer shouted, reinforcements jumping in from nearby systems. Then we're out of time, said. All remaining ships, full assault on the planet. We're not leaving until they understand the message. The surviving human ships, now numbering fewer than 50, dove towards surface. They didn't target military installations. They targeted communication centers, broadcasting stations, anything that would let them speak to the civilian population. Voice broadcast across the planet. People of your empire has conquered 800 worlds. Billions have died because your leaders believe might makes right. But now you face humanity. We're not like the others. We don't bow, we don't run, we fight. And we'll keep fighting until your empire learns that some things are worth more than conquest. Some things are worth dying for. We call it home. We call it freedom. And we will never surrender it. On surface, civilians watched the battle in their skis. Many had never seen their military challenged before. The idea that the mighty empire could bleed was shocking. Some were afraid, others were angry, but some, a growing number, began to question. Was endless conquest worth this? Was their empire's pride worth fighting an enemy that would literally fly across the galaxy to strike at there? The government had carefully controlled information for centuries. But now, with the virus disrupting their communications and human broadcasts flooding their networks, the truth was getting through. They learned about the 800 conquered worlds, about enslaved species forced to serve the empire, about colonies burned to ash because they refused to submit. For the first time, ordinary citizens saw their empire not as glorious conquerors, but as the villains of someone else's story. And they didn't like what they saw. At Earth, Admiral's defense was collapsing. He had lost 200 ships. There were landing forces across the planet, but every meter they advanced cost them. Sir, we can't hold much longer, his tactical officer said. We don't need to hold forever, replied, just long enough. For what? Smiled, for the galaxy to see what humans are made of. He was right, had been broadcasting the battle across all channels. Every enslaved species watched, every neutral power watched. They saw Earth outnumbered and fighting with everything they had. And they saw the Empire, which had always won easily, struggling against a species that refused to quit. Fleet Commander received an urgent communication from the High Council. Commander, cease the assault on Earth immediately. What, we're winning? Look at the casualty reports, Commander. We've lost over 800 ships at Earth. Another 400 at. We're facing rebellions on 12 conquered worlds, and our own people are questioning the war. This has gone on too long. Too many are dying. End it. But we can still crush them. At what cost? The council leader demanded. To destroy humanity completely, we'll lose thousands more ships. We'll face more rebellions. Our economy is straining. Our people are afraid. For 300 years, we've conquered because it was easy. This isn't easy anymore. End the war, that's an order. Stared at the communication screen, unable to process what he was hearing. The Empire was backing down. For the first time in its history, the mighty were choosing to negotiate instead of conquer. At received an unexpected transmission. Human ship defender, this is Defense Command. We request a ceasefire. We wish to negotiate. Looked at his bridge crew. They were exhausted, wounded, and down to their last ammunition. Of the 200 ships that started this mission, only 23 remained. Tell them we'll consider it, said, after they call off their attack on Earth. Sir, we're in no position to make demands. They don't know that, said with a tired smile. And we're the ones who just struck there. We're the ones who showed them they can bleed. We have exactly one card to play, and it's that they're scared of what we'll do next. It worked. An hour later, the fleet at Earth received withdrawal orders. Admiral couldn't believe his sensors. They're leaving. Yes, sir, all ships are pulling back. Slumped in his chair, suddenly feeling every one of his 63 years. We held. By all the stars, we actually held. Stood in the ruins of what used to be Shanghai, watching lift off and leave. Stood beside him, both of them covered in dust and blood. Did we win? She asked. No, said quietly, but we didn't lose, and sometimes that's enough. The negotiations took 3 weeks. They were held on a neutral station, with representatives from humanity, the Empire, and 47 enslaved species that had contacted. Admiral led the human delegation. Fleet commander represented the. You should have run, said during their first private meeting. Every species with intelligence flees when facing extinction. Every single one. Why didn't you? Because this is our home, said simply. Earth is where humanity was born. Our parents are buried there. Our children play in those streets. Running would mean abandoning all of that. And humans don't abandon home. We can't. It's not in our nature. You're insane. Maybe, agreed. But we're insane and still standing. You're the deadliest empire in the galaxy and we made you blink. Was silent for a long moment. What do you want? Independence for Earth and all human colonies. Freedom for the 47 species you enslaved. And a guarantee that you'll never attack humanity again. The Council will never agree to free the conquered species. Then the war continues, said calmly. And next time we won't just strike, we'll hit every colony simultaneously. We'll teach every enslaved species how to make improvised weapons. We'll turn your entire empire into a guerrilla war that will bleed you for generations. Is that what you want? Looked at this human, this small creature from a species they had dismissed as primitive, and he saw in her eyes the same thing he had seen in all the humans he had fought. Absolute, unshakable determination. The Empire could win, eventually, but the cost would be enormous, and for what pride? I'll speak to the Council, said. The final treaty was signed 4 weeks after the Battle of. Humanity gained full independence. 47 enslaved species were released from control. The Empire from 100 systems to maintain internal stability. It wasn't total victory. They were still a major power. They could have continued the war, but they chose not to, because humanity had taught them something they had never learned in 300 years of easy conquest. Some enemies cost too much to defeat. 10 years later, the Galactic Council held its first session with humanity as a full member species. Other civilizations approached Ambassador with the same question. How did your species survive? How did you make the deadliest empire in the galaxy, negotiate for the first time in their history. Looked out at the assembled delegates. She saw dozens of species, each with their own story, their own struggles, and she told them the truth. "We survived because we're too stubborn to quit," she said. "Humans measure worth not by victory but by what we refuse to surrender, and we will never surrender our home, not to anyone. That's not bravery, that's just who we are." She paused, then added, "They are the deadliest empire because for 300 years everyone was smart enough to fear them. We weren't smart enough. We were just too angry to run and too stubborn to die quietly. And sometimes stubbornness beats strength." In the audience, Captain Satwith, who had survived his crash after all, rescued by a human recovery team. Beside them were, survivors of the war, heroes of humanity. "She didn't mention that half of us thought we were going to die," whispered. "Because we did think that," whispered back. "But we fought anyway, that's the point." Above Earth, orbital stations bustled with activity. The planet had recovered but whole. New ships patrolled the system, a fleet built from lessons learned in blood and fire. And on every ship, every station, every colony, humans remembered. They remembered the cost of freedom, the price of stubbornness, and the simple truth that had saved their species. Sometimes the galaxy's deadliest empire is no match for someone who refuses to run. The empire still existed, still powerful, but they left humanity alone, because they had learned what happens when you fight someone who values home more than survival. And in the dark corners of space, enslaved species looked to Earth and whispered a single word: hope. The galaxy had changed, not because humanity was the strongest, but because they were too stubborn to accept defeat, even when defeat was certain. And sometimes, that's all it takes to change the galaxy.